Here's a quick video to remind you on how to find the slope of a table. So my first step is to calculate how the y values change and how the x values change. So we're going to divide the change in y by the change in x. And then we have to simplify them. So whenever we talk about change in math class, we talk about finding the difference or how one number is changing to another number. So we're going to figure out the change in y, and that's going to go on top of our fraction. And then we're going to find the change in x, and that's going to be going in the bottom of our fraction, because slope is always when we have the change in y over the change in x. In math class, I will probably use the symbol like a triangle, which is really like the delta symbol, and delta means that we're trying to find the change of those. So in my y column on my first table, I'm trying to figure out how this point 1, 20 moves to 3, 30. So I can look at just my y numbers, and I can see that to go from 20 to 30, I'm going to have to add 10. And then from going from 1 to 3, I'm going to have to add 2. I'm going to do that for the next set of points. From 30 to 40, I'm adding 10 again. From 3 to 5, I'm adding 2. So for each of those ratios, I can write them as a change in y over a change in x. So my first set, I had a change in y of 10 and a change of x of 2. In my second ratio, or my second change, I also had another 10 in y and a 2 in the x. And then my last one, it's going to follow the same pattern. I'm adding 10 in the y column, and x is adding 2. So again, all of my fractions or all of my ratios are going to equal 10 over 2, which is going to simplify down to 5 once I divide those, because 10 divided by 2 is 5. Not all tables are going to work out this constant rate. I'm going to do an example towards the end of the video. So if you need to figure out how to do a table that has not a constant rate, then just skip to the last example. So let's try another example here. Again, I'm going to go from 10 to 8, and this time I'm going to be subtracting 2. From -5 to 0, I'm going to be adding 5. On my next point, I will be subtracting 2 while adding 5 on this side. And then my last point will be subtracting 2 again and then adding 5. So my slope with all of my y's changes and all of my x changes the same, I know that I can just write my fraction as -2 over 5, and that's as simplified as it gets. So I'm going to do a couple of more examples. All right, on this next problem, I'm going to find my change in y over my change in x. So to go from my first y to my second one, I'm going to be subtracting 2. While in my x column, I'm going to be adding 1. My next set, from 12 to 10, I'm subtracting 2. From -1 to 0, I'm adding 1. And then my last one, I am subtracting 2 again and adding 1. So since all of my changes in y's and changes in x's are the same numbers, I can just go ahead and take those numbers and write it as a fraction. So -2 is going to be on the top of my fraction, because that's my change in y. My 1 is going to be in the bottom, which is my change in x. And then if I simplify that down, negative 2 divided by 1 is just going to be the answer, negative 2. All right, let's do this last question. So on this last one, we're going to look at the change in y over the change in x like we have been. Our change in y from 4 to a negative 2, we are subtracting 6, while on the x, we are going to be adding 2. So with this ratio, I can go ahead and write it as my fraction. Negative 6 is my y changes, so that's going to go on top of my fraction, and 2 is my x changes, so I'm going to put that on the bottom. My next set, I'm going from negative 2 to negative 11, so I am subtracting 9. From 1 to 4, I am adding 3. We're still going to write our fraction, so negative 9 over 3. I know these fractions don't look the same, but once we simplify down, it'll be the same. And then my last set, I'm going to be subtracting 3 while I'm adding 1. So that's my last fraction or ratio. So looking at all these different fractions, I know that they're obviously different, but if I actually divide them, negative 6 divided by 2 is negative 3. Negative 9 divided by 3 is negative 3. And negative 3 divided by 1 is negative 3. Since they're all simplified down to the same number, this negative 3 is my slope answer.